This is the best dinner ever.
I'm so glad you're enjoying it, sweetie.
It really is special.
Sad millionaire CEO dines alone on Christmas Eve. Then a single mother and her twin daughters arrive. He was already seated when the waiter returned and quietly said the kitchen was running late. Everett Callahan nodded, polite as always, staring at the empty chair across from him. Christmas Eve, prime rib on the way, a full restaurant, and somehow, he was the only one sitting completely alone. That wasn't the part that hurt the most. He reached into his coat pocket, touching the small velvet box he never opened anymore. It had been there for years, untouched, like a promise frozen in time. Tonight was supposed to be different. In a life he no longer lived. He had imagined laughter, small voices, two little girls asking for dessert. Instead, there was silence and the sound of cutlery around him. Across the room, families leaned toward each other, sharing plates and stories. Children swung their legs under tables, impatient and glowing with excitement. Everett kept his eyes down, pretending his phone mattered more than the ache. He told himself this was just another dinner, just another night. But Christmas Eve never lets you lie. If you believe in compassion and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment to like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us how one small act can change everything. He checked his watch, not because he was in a hurry. Waiting felt easier than remembering why he hated nights like this. The chair across from him stayed empty, perfectly aligned, painfully intentional. That chair had been meant for someone who never made it this far. And he'd built an entire empire trying not to think about that. Then the restaurant door opened again, letting in cold air and snow. A woman stepped inside, brushing flakes from her coat, holding two small hands. The girls were identical, same curls, same bright eyes, same red bows. They scanned the room like it was a wonderland. Everett didn't look up yet, but something shifted. The hostess leaned down to speak to the woman, pointing toward a corner table. One of the girls tugged free, her shoes tapping softly on the floor. She stopped walking and stared at Everett. Not curious, not shy, just certain, as if she'd found exactly who she was looking for. Everett felt it before he saw her, that pull you get when a moment is about to change you. He raised his eyes slowly, unprepared for the small face watching him closely. The girl tilted her head, studying him, and then she smiled. She took a step closer, completely unafraid. Her sister whispered something behind her, but she didn't stop. Everett opened his mouth, unsure why his heart had started racing. He had no idea what she was about to say, and no idea that his life was about to split in two. Everett Callahan had built his life around things that didn't ask questions. Numbers made sense. Systems behaved. Companies followed rules if you were precise enough. People, on the other hand, were unpredictable. That's why he'd learned to keep a careful distance. It was safer that way, or at least that's what he told himself. At 41, Everett was known as a self-made millionaire CEO. Financial tech, clean reputation, no scandals, no drama. Magazines loved to call him disciplined, focused, unstoppable. What they didn't write about were the empty apartments, or the holidays he spent pretending work was enough. Years ago, there had been someone, a woman who laughed easily and believed he'd eventually slow down. She used to tease him about calendars and deadlines. She'd already picked names for their future kids. 2 girls, she'd said, always 2. Then life stepped in quietly and took her away. No warnings, no villains, just a phone call that split time in half. Everett had learned how to survive that day by shutting something down. Love became a locked room he never reopened. Work became the only place grief couldn't reach him. Since then, he measured life in quarters and profits. He expanded offices, hired teams, signed contracts worth millions of dollars. He bought silence with long hours and control. And when people asked why he never remarried, he smiled politely. Some stories were easier left untold. Christmas Eve was the hardest night of the year. It always reminded him of plans that never made it past imagination. Tonight, he'd chosen the restaurant because it was busy. Crowds made loneliness easier to hide. No one noticed a quiet man when the room was loud. He sat perfectly straight, hands folded, like he belonged anywhere. The waiter recognized him but treated him like everyone else. Everett appreciated that. No special attention, no pity, just another customer waiting for dinner. That was when he noticed the woman more clearly. She wasn't dressed for the place, But she wasn't uncomfortable either. She moved with purpose, gently guiding the two identical girls. They were excited, whispering to each other, eyes wide with wonder. Everett felt something tighten in his chest before he understood why.